This is an unusual place for this Brazilian indigenous group to be performing a ritual. But they're one of around 200 groups and 8,000 people who've travelled from remote locations, often for days, in buses and sometimes boats. They've come to the capital, Brasilia, for an event they hope will not only highlight the challenges they face as indigenous peoples, but also address what they're calling the biggest setback to their rights in decades. A new law known as the Time Marker Law.
So
the Time Marker Law is an attempt by the Brazilian state, its leaders and politicians, to try to continue annihilating indigenous peoples. It completely attacks the right to be indigenous and to be indigenous in your own territory and to recognize that these territories belong to indigenous peoples. These territories connect our lives, our beings as indigenous peoples, our existence.
For the indigenous peoples here at the camp in Brasilia and across the country, the new law represents a watershed moment. It weakens their claims to their ancestral lands, saying these can only be recognised if they prove they occupied the territory in 1988. It also paved the way for mining, road building and other construction projects. Activists say this would be a disaster for the environment, which indigenous peoples protect.
People, our planet is dying, and this planet does not only belong to indigenous peoples. If we don't look after it, if we don't use things that nature offers, we are going to die. We are talking about climate change. We are talking about green forests, which needs to be looked after.
The indigenous peoples vent their rage at a demonstration in Brasilia's government district. The protest is taking place within sight of Congress, the body that approved the law they say now threatens their survival. Still dominated by wealthy landowners and the right-wing allies of agribusiness, Congress signed off on the measure despite opposition from left-wing President Lula da Silva. Supporters argue the law is needed to establish legal certainty and protect commercial interests. But the indigenous peoples say without their lands, their way of life and culture will die. And without those, the forests will die, which will likely have an impact on climate change. And that could have consequences for everyone.